I'm Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's economics editor.
Very, very rocky.
Death by government.
Drain the swamp.
Hello and welcome to another installment of Liberty Nation's Swamponomics videocast. I'm Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's economics editor. This week, can the United States fund all the wars? President Joe Biden recently appeared on 60 Minutes and was asked by host Scott Pelley if the wars in Israel and Ukraine are more than the US can take on at the same time. The president responded, quote, "We can take care of both of these and still maintain our overall international defense. We have the capacity to do this, and we have an obligation to. We are the essential nation to paraphrase the former Secretary of State, and if we don't, who does?" Of course, Madeleine Albright was the same person who thought that the deaths of 500,000 Iraqi children were, quote, worth it. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen told Sky News in a recent interview that the US government can afford wars on two fronts in Israel and the Ukraine. She said, quote, "Americans can certainly afford to stand with Israel and support Israel's military needs, and we also can and must support Ukraine in its struggle against Russia." Yellen noted that the US economy is doing extremely well, inflation has come down considerably, and the labor market is the best in 50 years. Of course, no mention about the $33.5 trillion national debt or the $2 trillion budget hole. More on that later. But not everyone in the administration thinks perpetually funding one country is feasible. National Security Council Communications Coordinator John Kirby also recently told reporters during a White House press briefing that funding for the Ukraine is, quote, coming near to the end of the rope and is, quote, not going to be indefinite. Remember, it is not only two wars the US is spending money on. This is in addition to the global war on terror, military operations worldwide, and the $700 billion defense budget. So, ultimately, who was right? The United States is drowning in red ink, there's no doubt about it. The country can hardly keep its own doors open. This past month, the national debt soared $275 billion in a single day. The federal government is running a $2 trillion budget deficit while spending $1 trillion a year in interest payments. Unfunded liabilities and expenditures total $200 trillion. One development has been lost in the headlines. Washington is having trouble financing its $7 trillion in spending. The US Treasury recently sold just $20 billion of 30-year bonds. This was considerably weak as dealers had to grab more supply due to investors sitting on the sidelines. The disappointing performance was driven mainly by soaring US debt fears and the federal government flooding capital markets with bonds. Of course, at the same time, don't expect the Federal Reserve to bail out Uncle Sam either, as the central bank has trimmed its balance sheet by $1 trillion since the beginning of 2022. In the end, it is hard to say with a straight face that the US can fund double wars, no matter what position you have. And then there is the elephant in the room. What happens if China invades Taiwan, adding to the growing pile of wars around the globe? Does the US have the means to pay for a third war too? It would be a hard sell for the public as millions of Americans contend with soaring prices, high borrowing costs, and paycheck-to-paycheck living. The non-interventionists would also be quick to point out that the US sends billions of dollars every year to Israel, which is currently the most advanced, developed, dignified, diverse, and prosperous country in the Middle East. They would also contend that the US should defund all sides and stay neutral. For this topic, they will be left up to the political observers. For now, the war in Israel sparks implications for global financial markets and the international economy. From the effects on energy to the impact on global trade, there are many components in the latest strife 5,600 miles away. Does President Biden and his administration truly believe the US can fund double wars? If he does, he has not looked at the budget lately. That's it for me this week. Please read my full Swamponomics column on the pages of LibertyNation.com and be sure to check out my previous Swamponomics TV interviews. Thank you. I'm Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's economics editor.
Very, very rocky.
Death by government.
Drain the swamp.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.